Right now, while you're watching this, billions of dollars are changing hands in transactions that will never appear on any tax form, any bank statement, or any government record. This is the shadow economy, and it's bigger than you think. What if I told you that nearly half the world's workers exist in a system that operates completely outside the rules that govern the rest of us? The informal economy, sometimes called the shadow economy or underground economy, is the vast network of economic activity that happens beyond government regulation and taxation. It includes everything from street vendors selling fruit to construction workers paid in cash to entire manufacturing operations that exist off the books. According to the International Labour Organization, approximately 2 billion workers worldwide operate in this space, representing about 61% of global employment. ILO Global Estimates. 2023. This isn't just a story about crime or tax evasion. For many people, especially in developing nations, the informal economy is the only economy they know. It's where they earn their living, feed their families, and build their lives. Understanding this hidden world means understanding how half of humanity actually survives. The informal economy isn't new. It's existed in various forms throughout human history, but the term itself was coined in 1972 by British anthropologist Keith Hart while studying street traders in Ghana. Hart observed that traditional economic theories couldn't explain the complex systems of work and exchange happening outside official channels. Hart, Informal Income Opportunities and Urban Employment in Ghana, 1973. During the 1980s and 1990s, international organizations began recognizing the scale of informal work globally. The World Bank and the International Monetary Fund started including shadow economy estimates in their economic assessments. They discovered something surprising. In many countries, the informal sector wasn't shrinking as economies modernized. It was growing. The 2008 global financial crisis marked a turning point. As formal employment collapsed across developed nations, millions of people turned to informal work to survive. Suddenly, the shadow economy wasn't just a developing world phenomenon. It was everywhere. Street markets expanded in European cities. Cash-based services proliferated in North America. The gig economy emerged, blurring the lines between formal and informal work even further. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated these trends dramatically. Lockdowns and business closures pushed an estimated 120 million workers from formal employment into informal work between 2020 and 2022. According to research published by the World Economic Forum, WEF Labor Market Report 2022, digital platforms enabled new forms of unregulated work, from online tutoring to cryptocurrency trading, creating what some economists call the digital informal economy. Measuring something that deliberately hides from measurement is extraordinarily difficult. Economists use multiple methods to estimate the shadow economy's size, including discrepancies between national income and expenditure data, electricity consumption patterns, and currency demand models. According to a comprehensive study by economists Friedrich Schneider and Dominik Enster, the shadow economy represents between 10% and 65% of GDP in different countries. Schneider and Enster, Shadow Economies, Size, Causes, and Consequences. 2000. The International Labour Organization has confirmed that informal employment dominates in many regions. In Africa, 85.8% of employment is informal. In Asia and the Pacific, it's 68.2%. Even in Europe and Central Asia, informal employment accounts for 25.1% of all work. ILO World Employment and Social Outlook 2024. These figures are based on household surveys, labor force statistics, and establishment censuses conducted across member states. Researchers at the International Monetary Fund have estimated that in some countries, the informal economy generates more revenue than the formal sector. A 2021 IMF working paper reported that in Bolivia, the shadow economy was estimated at 62.3% of official GDP, while in Switzerland it was only 6.5%. Medina and Schneider, Shedding Light on the Shadow Economy, IMF Working Paper, 2021. What actually happens in this hidden economy varies dramatically by region and context. Street vendors in Mumbai operate differently than cash contractors in Los Angeles. But common threads exist. Transactions happen in cash or barter, Workers lack legal protections and benefits, and activities go unreported to tax authorities. Economists and policymakers disagree fundamentally about whether the informal economy is primarily a problem or a solution. One perspective views it as a survival mechanism and economic safety net. Proponents of this view argue that informal work provides income for people excluded from formal employment due to lack of education, documentation, or opportunity. Hernando de Soto, a Peruvian economist, has argued that the informal sector represents entrepreneurial energy trapped by excessive regulation and bureaucracy. De Soto, The Mystery of Capital, 2000. The opposing view frames the shadow economy as harmful to economic development and social welfare. Critics point out that informal workers lack access to healthcare, retirement benefits, workplace safety protections, and legal recourse when exploited. They argue that tax evasion by informal businesses creates unfair competition and deprives governments of revenue needed for public services. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has repeatedly emphasized that informality perpetuates inequality and undermines economic stability. OECD Economic Outlook, 2023. A third perspective suggests the dichotomy itself is false. Research from the Institute of Development Studies indicates that most workers move fluidly between formal and informal employment throughout their lives, especially in developing economies. The boundaries are more porous than traditional models suggest. Some workers hold formal jobs, while also engaging in informal side activities. Some informal businesses are taking steps toward formalization, while maintaining some off-the-books operations. Significant gaps remain in our understanding. Data quality varies wildly between countries. The rise of digital platforms has created hybrid models that don't fit traditional categories. Cryptocurrency and digital payments are enabling new forms of untracked economic activity that researchers are only beginning to study. For Maria, a street food vendor in Manila, the informal economy isn't an abstract economic concept. It's how she feeds her 4 children. She wakes at 4 in the morning to prepare food, sells until late evening, and earns about $8 a day. She has no health insurance, no pension, and no legal protection if someone refuses to pay, or if authorities shut down her stall. When she got sick with dengue fever, she lost 2 weeks of income and fell into debt with a loan shark who charges 20% interest per month. Her story is repeated millions of times across the developing world. The human cost extends beyond individual hardship. Informal workers are more vulnerable to exploitation, trafficking, and abuse because they have no legal recourse. Children are more likely to work in informal sectors, perpetuating cycles of poverty and limited education. Women are overrepresented in informal work globally, often in the lowest paying and most precarious positions. Yet for many, informal work represents dignity and agency. It's the difference between unemployment and survival. It's a way to use skills and build businesses when formal opportunities don't exist. Construction workers in informal settlements build homes for their communities. Artisans preserve traditional crafts. Micro-entrepreneurs create local economic ecosystems. The informal economy is simultaneously a site of exploitation and empowerment, survival and innovation. Think of the formal economy as a well-lit highway with clear lanes, traffic lights, and rules. The informal economy is the vast network of dirt roads, footpaths, and shortcuts that connect communities the highway never reaches. Both serve essential functions, but only one gets mapped and maintained. The shadow economy matters because it reveals fundamental truths about how economic systems work and who they serve. When billions of people cannot access formal employment or find the barriers to entry too high, the problem isn't with those people, it's with the system. Economist Mariana Mazzucato has argued that our economic models fail to recognize or value huge swathes of productive human activity. Mazzucato, The Value of Everything, 2018. This has profound implications for how we think about economic development, taxation, social welfare, and labor rights. If governments cannot tax or regulate half of economic activity, traditional policy tools become less effective. If workers lack protection and benefits, inequality deepens. If businesses can avoid regulations by operating informally, legitimate enterprises face unfair competition. Yet heavy-handed formalization efforts often fail pushing activity deeper underground or destroying livelihoods without creating alternatives. The rise of digital platforms has made these questions more urgent. Is an Uber driver a formal or informal worker? What about someone selling handmade goods on Etsy? The gig economy has created millions of jobs that exist in legal and regulatory gray zones, combining elements of both formal and informal work in ways that challenge traditional categories. Here's what we know. The informal economy encompasses roughly 2 billion workers and represents between 10% and 65% of GDP, depending on the country. It's neither disappearing nor transitioning smoothly into formality. It's evolving, diversifying, and in some cases expanding. What remains uncertain is whether current trends toward digitalization will increase transparency and formalization or simply create new forms of hidden economic activity. We also don't fully understand the long-term social and economic consequences of having such a large proportion of humanity operating outside legal and social protection systems. The future of work itself may hinge on how we answer these questions. Scenario 1, gradual. Formalization, medium confidence. Governments continue implementing policies to reduce barriers to formal employment, such as simplified business registration, portable benefit systems, and targeted tax incentives. Digital payment systems make informal transactions more visible, creating pressure and opportunity for formalization. This scenario assumes steady economic growth and political will for reform. Scenario 2, persistent dualism, high confidence. The global economy continues operating as a two-tier system, with formal and informal sectors coexisting indefinitely. Digital platforms create new hybrid models that combine elements of both. Inequality persists or deepens as formal workers maintain benefits and protections while informal workers remain vulnerable. This is essentially a continuation of current trends. Scenario 3, expansion and crisis, low to medium confidence. Economic shocks, climate change, or technological disruption push more workers into informal employment. Social protection systems become increasingly disconnected from how people actually work and earn. This creates pressure for fundamental restructuring of economic institutions, labor law, and social contracts. The most likely outcome is probably some combination of all three, varying by region and sector. What happens next depends on policy choices being made right now about labor rights, taxation, technology regulation, and economic inclusion. The shadow economy isn't hiding in dark alleys. It's happening in broad daylight on street corners, in homes, and on digital platforms all around us. It's not a criminal underworld, but a parallel economic universe where billions of people live and work every day. Understanding it means understanding the real economy, not just the one that shows up in official statistics. If this story interested you, watch our next documentary on how digital currencies are creating entirely new forms of money that exist outside traditional banking systems. The underground economy is evolving, and the tools people use to participate in it are changing faster than governments can track. Source notes and disclaimer. This documentary drew on peer-reviewed research from the International Labour Organization, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and academic economists studying informal labor markets globally. Delta estimates vary depending on methodology and definitions used. The informal economy is a rapidly evolving field of study with ongoing debates among experts. Statistics and scenarios presented reflect current research consensus, but should not be considered definitive. Individual stories represent composite narratives based on documented experiences. This video is for educational purposes and does not constitute economic, legal, or policy advice.